Hello and welcome to the Zwift highlights of Stage 3 Race Scotland on the Muckle Yin circuit. The race is 24 kilometres with 283 metres of climbing, and let's take a look at the profile here. Lots of little ramps, little kickers, enough to sap the energy through the stage, and then two pretty significant climbs. That Sgurr North climb especially, it's about 3 minutes of effort for me. It's about the limit of what I can tolerate climbing wise. And then we've got another climb, Sgurr South, later in the race, which, can I hang on until then? Anyway, flag's going to drop here. We're just about to set off. So, surprise, surprise, a fast start in the Zwift race. And you just watch top right. I've fast forwarded the tape a bit here. And these brakes, they just establish almost immediately. I mean, there's some people who get left at the line. But straight away, this thing strings out. And then in a minute, I'm going to slow the tape just as those brakes kind of solidify. And you can see an early selection in the race, barely a kilometre into the thing. So here we are, barely half a kilometre into the race, and that stringing out has really produced some splits. And this group here, if you follow it on in the top right hand corner, this is it now. This group is a genuine down selection, and we continue in this group to the end of the race. I mean, you'll see later, there are various other splits within this group that occur. But, so early in the race, half a kilometre, and already a decisive move's taken place. Now, we've got a bit of respite until we get to the first significant ramp of the race. And my first consideration here was the power-up I had. So I've got an aero. I know there's a couple of stinging little ramps coming up, and I want to use as little effort as possible over them. So I was looking to ditch that aero power-up and hopefully get a feather at the next checkpoint. Now, prior to getting there, just a little bit about this course. You saw the profile. It's fairly lumpy throughout, and then it's got those two significant climbs. I've said this before in my videos, I'm definitely not a climber, I'm more of a sprinty kind of rider. I thought that first big climb, the Sgurr North, was going to be about the limit of my capability, and my aim in this race was just to stick in the front group over that climb and kind of see what develops from there. I was worried if I was able to stick in the group over that first climb, the second climb might kill me off. But yeah, that was my aim, front group, over the first climb, and just see what plays out. So in terms of overall race position and my goal for this event, we've got 66 riders in the whole thing. We've probably only lost about 15 of them so far. I want to stick with that front group as long as possible, hopefully make it in the top 10 by the end of the event. Anyway, I'm using my aero power up now, get rid of it, because we're just about to come through the archway. Hopefully, I can pick up a feather for those couple of ramps that are coming later on. And no, another aero, so not ideal, but as you'll see later on, I do get quite lucky with power-ups later in the event, so yeah, take this one on the chin. So after that fast start, it's been pretty tame. I've been doing powers that are typically threshold and below. I'm able to coast quite a bit on this rolling terrain. But in a minute, I'm going to slow the tape because we're going to come to that first ramp. And this is fairly steep, 30-second effort, 7% or so. And it kind of loops around a castle feature on the course. And I wanted the feather for this because I didn't want to burn any matches. But I'm left with the aero, so I'm going to have to kind of take it raw. No power up this thing and just see how it plays out. But my aim is to get over this thing, stick with the front group and use as little energy as possible. But look at this, feather power-ups are just popping everywhere. Everyone's got the right idea. Unfortunately, I didn't get lucky with that power-up, but I'm able to stick kind of mid to front group, staying under 500 watts for most of the time. So I'm pretty happy with that level of effort. Shouldn't kill me too much because I've got a fair few more of these ramps to come, plus those two big climbs. Now, I was so preoccupied by conserving energy up that climb that I missed this split that's emerging ahead. See, there's that string of riders that are peeling off, and I thought I've really got to try and play this cool. I don't want to use too much energy to catch on, but I did a quick boost up to 500 odd watts there, deployed the aero, kept the power pretty high, hoping just to gently attach myself to these breakaway riders. But you see in a second, I just steam right through them and I shoot out the front of the group. So yeah, my whole aim of conserving energy up that climb, I kind of undid it with my panic afterwards. So I've really got to learn from this. I'm going to fast forward the tape quickly, but before you know it, we're on to the next little ramp. So I'm going to slow it down just as we get there. And I'm looking top right-hand corner of the map here. And, whilst I was a bit annoyed that I shot out the front of the group after we did that climb, I think it may have been worthwhile. I was a bit too panicky, but look how strung out things are. I really did need to make an effort to get in that front bunch because I think this split could consolidate and we could be left with a pretty significant down selection later in the race. Anyway, we come over the brow of this second ramp, and yeah, the group I think that's going to coalesce in a minute, it feels like it's going to be 25 riders or so that could bunch back up. So yeah, a lot of damage done to that pack. It's probably split that front group in half, just those two little ramps. So it just shows you the damage these little ramps on this Scotland map can do. Yeah, and another hugely important thing there over that hill is I got the feather power up, and that is excellent because the next main feature of this course is going to be that Sgurr North climb. Biggest climb on the course, about 3 minutes for me, so that feather is just going to be hugely important to keep me with that front pack. I'm going to fast forward this now because there's no huge dramas until we get to that next big climb. One thing I noticed just on replaying this footage is top right hand corner, that map. Look at the guy who's behind our bunch. Somehow, on his own, he manages to bridge across to this group. And we're going at a fair speed, like typically threshold power for me. So fair play to that guy. You'll see him, here he comes, just approaching us. I'm doing 270 watts average there, which is just under my threshold. And yeah, he catches back on. So really, really impressive. Anyway, just about to slow it down. We're about to come to the big climb on the course, the Sgurr North. It's about 3 minutes of effort for me, so it's going to be that kind of VO2 max power just above that. And my aim here is to claw on to this front group, whatever it takes. I want to make this front bunch over this hill. Now, I think the stats on this hill are misleading because it's about 4% for just under 2 kilometers, but that doesn't tell the true story. As you'll see here, this thing goes from like 7% ramps to minus 1% declines at times. So it's not a consistent VO2 max like effort. It's more kind of threshold effort on the flats. And then as you get to the ramps, for me, I'm boosting up to kind of 400, 450 watts just to stick with the front group. And I've still got that feather power up. So in a minute, you'll see a bunch of people use it up this steep pitch here as we get to about 7%. I know there's more of these steep pitches later on, so I'm trying to, just under my own steam, stick with this front group, and hopefully, as I'm really struggling on those later pitches, I'm going to use my feather there. I've just got to make sure that I don't hold on to it too long and miss all the steep parts and deploy it on some flat just as we approach the top of the hill. So yeah, I think I get it just about right in a second. Get to one of the final steep pitches, deploy that feather, and yeah, it sees me right. I should hopefully be able to stick with this front group. So as we round this corner, I see this steep pitch ahead of me. And I think, yeah, this is the time for the feather power up. And then I look at the gradient, 12, 13%. Looks like I've got it spot on, the steepest pitch on the course so far, and I've used the feather just the right time. However, it does roll over to a descent now, so I've wasted a bit of that power up, but I think it nets out as a pretty good use of it. Now, as I got to here, I started to look around me, see I'm still in the front group, but it really is starting to thin out. And there is a descent coming, so if I do let a few guys go at the front, I'm probably going to be able to catch them back up. So I was trying to weigh up, how much energy to expend, how panicky do I get about sticking with these front guys, versus, conserving a bit of energy, giving it a bit of a boost on the downhill and picking them back up later. So I made the decision to, pretty much stick with the front guys if I could. You can see here a few guys just go off that I just cannot chase at this point. I'm up at 400 watts, pretty much on the limit of what I can sustain at this time. But yeah, I've stuck with the front guys, generally speaking. Look at that map top right. The whole front group is thinned out. We're probably down to, 10, 12 riders in the front bunch now. So yeah, my aims of a kind of top 10-ish finish are looking pretty good if I can stick with this group to the end. Looks like the top 10 selection's already made. So I'm just going to fast forward in a second because as you'll see, the front group split has been established. I managed just to stick onto the back of it between now and the top of this climb, and then we've got the descent to come. So another good thing, I get another feather power up, and generally speaking on this course, I want those feathers so I can cope with the ramps, the hills okay. The only time I really want to get an aero is just ahead of the finish. I want that aero for that final sprint. So as we get to the bottom of the descent here, you see I did a super tuck right at the end. That was the only opportunity I got to do a super tuck. So I don't know whether it's the road surface in Zwift with too high a rolling resistance, or there's just not enough sustained pitches of, greater than 5% gradient or so. You just never get up enough speed to get into that super tuck position. So if you're hoping for a bit of respite on the backside of that climb, yeah, you're going to be hard pushed to get some. You're always having to keep the chain tight to keep up with that front group. There's very limited opportunities to freewheel and coast. So I've slowed the footage down again. We are just about to come up to that little ramp that circles through the castle again. It feels like we were only just going over it a few minutes ago. And this is the start of 3 successive ramps before we have to go into the Sgurr South climb. So it really is relentless, this course from here. And I use that feather that I got here to just stick with this front group using minimum effort whatsoever. You'll see in a minute though, I get freaked out by these flame socks and I boost up to about 575 watts just to keep with these guys whose feet are on fire. It really does put me off that, and always makes me think like I've got to get back on the pedals because there's some action happening. Yeah, got to get myself some of those socks. Anyway, things quickly calm down, group coalesces again, and we embark on a bit of a truce until we get to the next ramp. So by this time, we've done a fair few of these little ramps, plus we've done that Sgurr North climb. And even though cardiovascular-wise, I'm not feeling too bad, like my heart rate's able to recover quite well after we come off the back of one of those climbs, it's my legs at this time. They're really in trouble. The Sgurr North climb put them in a bit of a hole. And even though I think I can tolerate more of these little ramps, is when we get to the Sgurr South climb, that's where I think I'm really going to come unstuck. So at the moment, I'm nicely in this front group. Got kind of 11, 12, 13 or so riders there. I think my top 10, if I could stay in this group, could be quite safe. But it's all going to come down to that Sgurr South climb. So a couple more ramps before we get there. But yeah, Sgurr South is where I think it's going to kick off. Anyway, I've slowed the action down. We're just about to hit this next significant ramp. Goes up to 5, 6, 7% or so. And even though it strings out here, everything just comes back together just as we roll over the top. So I fast forward here as we go through the banner at the top of the climb, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed for a feather for that Sgurr South climb coming up, and I get an aero. So I'm going to hope there's a place to ditch this aero before we get to the Sgurr South climb, and hopefully roll the dice and pick up a feather just in time. We come to another significant ramp here, and even though we get up to like 450, 500 watts, the group just stays together. I was pretty surprised because for me that was a real big effort. I expected the thing to fracture, but no, everything knitted back together. We've still got our group of kind of 10, 12 at the front. And then I'm going to slow the action down in a second because we come up to another bit of a rise. And look at me, I find myself off the front. And at this time, my legs were absolutely cooked. So I really didn't want to be at the front trying to show this this image of strength because I really didn't have it. And I didn't want people to think, oh, this guy's strong, I want to put a dent in him. No, I wanted everything to be as calm as possible until we got to that Sgurr South climb if I was to have any hope of sticking with the bunch. Now I'll speed up the action now and you'll see in a minute I ease off, drop into obscurity in the pack, just try and keep my head down and out of the way. We stick together until the foot of the Sgurr climb, and at this time I've still got that aero power up that I want to ditch, and I see on the map in a minute an archway coming up, so I use the aero power up now, get rid of it ahead of the archway, and what do I pick up? A feather. Absolutely perfect for the Sgurr South climb. So I've slowed the tape down here because that roundabout that we've just turned left at, you can see it on the map just there. I completely missed it. I knew that to get to the Sgurr South climb, we'd come to a roundabout and we'd hang a left. Somehow during the race I missed it. Look at me, bottom left, I'm mopping my head down with a towel. I've eased off on the power, I'm taking it real easy, kind of gearing myself up for the climb, not realising that I'm actually on it right now. Then you see I pop out the saddle, panicking, thinking, oh crikey, I must have missed that turn somehow. It's a 9% incline, this has got to be the main climb. And yeah, I wasn't kind of mentally prepared for it at the time. And I saw the power we were doing, 400 watts here, and I thought, crikey, you know, hanging on to this for the next 2 or 3 minutes. My legs just absolutely did not have it. You can see the state of me there, bottom left, grit in my teeth. I'm not able to get back out the saddle and put in a real big dig because my legs just haven't got it. And it's here where I can just see people filing past me. I do a last little dig out the saddle and then you see I freewheeled after it because my legs were just twitching, cramping up. And now look at my power, like sub 200 watts there for a second. And I kind of give up. I think that's it. You know, me and the front group, we're not meant to be. So I ease off and I start looking back on the map, seeing who's coming up, who could I latch on to. Is there a worthwhile group to form? And as a group too, could we get together? Could we chase down the front group on the descent or on the flat towards the crit circuit around the city at the end? I'll fast forward things now, and you can see on the map, top right, there's only 2 riders behind me. There's one kind of in no man's land ahead of me, so maximum we could get 4 of us together. I just don't think it's going to be enough to chase down the kind of 12 or so riders that have gone down the road. But anyway, I pushed the pedals a bit down the descent. It's another one of those descents where you just can't get in super tuck. You're never going quick enough. And I managed to latch onto the back of this guy. And then from behind, in a minute, this guy just sails through. So it looks like we've potentially got a group of 3 to take us into that crit circuit in the city centre. And we stick together down the remainder of this descent, and it's a reasonably tame ride until we get to that crit circuit. There's a ramp just before you turn left into the city. We do a little bit of a boost up that in a second, but nothing too severe. And you'll see when we get into the city centre, everything calms down, and it's a bit of a cat and mouse game really around this crit circuit. So as we come into the crit circuit, taking it reasonably easy, a lot of it's sub-threshold. I'm just going to slow things down as we get to the final climb on this race, which is this Clyde Kicker. And I picked up a feather power-up at the top of the Sgurr climb, which is perfect for this kicker, but it's not perfect for the sprint finish that I'm envisaging us having in a second. So I use the feather, knowing there's a gantry at the top of this climb. Hopefully I'm going to pick up the aero helmet at the top of this hill. And the effort wasn't too ferocious up that hill, so my energy, I think I'm going to get it nicely back ahead of the sprint. We go through the gantry and I get an aero helmet, which is absolutely spot on for this final sprint. So from now, I mean, look at the watts, kind of in the 100s, low 200s. It is really quite easy pedaling around the remainder of this crit course. I'm just going to fast forward it now until we get to the final mini ramp before we turn left onto the final finish. So you'll see now around the rest of this crit circuit, we're taking it pretty easily. Everyone is saving their legs for that final sprint finish. And I've been watching the eWorld Championships just to get familiar with this last bit of the course. So we do a right-hander here, go around a little kind of chicane section, and then we've got a left-hander up into a short ramp. And then we've got a left at the top of this ramp, followed immediately by another left, and then a long drag to the finish. I've got the aero helmet ready to deploy, and I'm thinking when it gets to about 200 meters out, that's when I'll make my sprint, unless some action unfolds before then. And yeah, the action did unfold before then, because this guy D Williams, he gets the aero helmet going, he starts to kick at over 10 watts per kilo. I'm over geared at this point. My gear's too high. I get out the saddle and I'm just not able to kind of turn that gear over effectively. So it takes me a while to ramp up the power. But I get up to about 1,045 watts, finally get into my stride and start reeling in Williams and just pulling away from this guy Lynch who's on my tail. And I just get Williams before the line. I mean, that is a proper photo finish. So yeah, if anyone's seen that photo finish between Tim Merlier and Caleb Ewan at the recent UAE tour, yeah, I think there was similar levels of controversy there between me and that Mr. Williams, because I thought he had it, went across the line. I was like, oh no, I didn't quite reel him in quick enough. But the results came in and had me ahead somehow. So Mr. Williams, I'm very sorry. I thought you had that one. Anyway, really good race, killer workout. When I saw that profile to begin with, I thought this looks like hell for a rider like me. And yeah, that is how it felt. Those 2 big climbs kind of interspersed with those little ramps. I think it's the ramps that took it out of me, having a peak above 500 watts time and time again to stick with the front group. They just like completely knocked every last bit of energy out of my legs. Going up that Sgurr South climb, the second big one, the one I kind of dropped back on, cardiovascular wise, I didn't feel too bad. I thought I could, still had a lot of headroom heart rate wise. It was just my legs. As soon as I popped out the saddle to kind of get above 400, 450 watts to stick with the front group, I just didn't have it at all. I had to sit back down. And as soon as I sit back down at those kind of powers, it feels like a real slog. And I thought, I'm just not going to be able to maintain this. So yeah, I waited to regroup a little, group 2 on the road. That group wasn't big enough to reel any front group in on the flat or on the descent. So I just resigned myself to a little sprint off with a few guys there at the end. And yeah, we didn't get the top 10, but it was still something to play for. And yeah, an exciting finish, bit of cat and mouse, bit of finessing at the end. That guy Williams, he went early with the aero helmet with about 450 to go, which surprised me. But I was just able to reel him in right at the end there. In terms of like lessons to learn for me, I just need to get fitter at those kind of 2-minute plus efforts. Always been a weakness of mine, and I'm getting ever so slightly better. It used to be anything above 30 seconds I struggled with. Now it's anything above 2 minutes that's really a struggle. So I'm getting there bit by bit. Anyway, I highly recommend that route. The Muckle Yin route, excellent. It's a bit of everything: longer climbs, short ramps, sprint finishes, a real good bit of variety. Well worth giving a look. So thanks again for watching this one, and I'll see you all next time.